The Jayhawks haven't dominated the Big 12 in typical fashion the past couple years. It's time for Kansas to be Kansas again.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch to get your Thursday going the right way. I want to remind you that you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I want to say a special shout out to all the everydayers here with us today, all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord as well. It's great to have you. Today on the show, we're just taking a big fat rock chalk Jayhawk look at what's going on in Lawrence right now, just a couple of hours up the road from where I live in Joplin, Missouri. And joining us to help unpack that is the great host of Locked On Jayhawks, Mr. Derek Johnson. DJ, it's great to be with you, buddy. Excited to talk Jayhawks. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at these back-to-back seasons of historically uncharacteristic results that we've seen from the Jayhawks. Can Bill Self get things back on track? Is Jacque Vaughn coming in? Is that an indicator of things to come? We'll look at the interesting personnel goings on, including like, hey, there's some more roster spots to fill out here. And then we'll look at the schedule. The non-con is out for Kansas, and we know the Big 12 opponents as well, so we'll make some predictions. Derek, let's start there, though. I want to see Kansas get back to being Kansas. Like, what a crazy streak of dominance it had been. What, in your opinion, has led to these atypical results the past two seasons?
Well, if you want to talk from a personnel standpoint, I think you could view it a couple ways. One was a lack of fitting roster. Another one, you could look at it as misses in evaluations of your talent. So the first end of that is the lack of fitting roster. We saw DeJuan Harris as the starter on a national championship team. We saw KJ Adams as the starting center on a team that was a 1 seed that, I know they lost in the second round, but had Bill Self been healthy, maybe they make it a little bit further. I know UConn was standing in their way if they make it past the second round, but then you also look at it in Hunter Dickinson, and like he was a very productive player who in his freshman season at Michigan went to the Elite Eight and was on one of the best teams in the country. Each individual player was a successful player if you put the right pieces around them. But I don't think they fit together. When you had KJ next to Hunter, it clogged up the lane and took away some of Hunter's effectiveness. But also, from KJ's perspective, he was a good defender who, brought certain things that maybe got taken away in other ways by having DeJuan Harris on the floor, right? Because with KJ, if he's a non-shooter, you have DeJuan, who's not really a big shooter either. Right. It's just all of those pieces. You can make it work in any way you want, but it was tough for those guys to work together, I think. So that's part of it. The other part is the misses. And you can go back to the high school recruiting ranks where they missed on guys like Zach Clements and Kyle Cuff and even the guys that, like looking back, Zuby Ejiofor would have been a hit, ended up transferring away and having success at St. John's. You had some of the misses from the transfer portal. It seems like Bill Self has struggled a little bit there with whether it's finding the right guys. I think they've tried to change it up a little bit this offseason, or finding the guys that fit what he wants, right? It just didn't really work with AJ Storr and Ryland Griffin and Nick Timberlake and some of these guys. So I think a lot of it is a little personnel decisions, but kind of in different ways.
Man, it's so I love that take on it, Derek, because it's like it felt like all the individual pieces were there. I'm like, man, Ryland Griffin was great in Tuscaloosa. How did that not translate? Timberlake coming over was like, oh, he's just gonna fill it up. Furphy was a late addition, obviously, but once he got going, he was more, but it just took a while because of his late summer addition. And so I think you're right. Like, it's just the individual pieces made sense. It was just a roster fit issue, and that was a big bummer. So then my question, Derek, and I know we want to get to personnel more heavily in the second segment. So if this is the answer to this question, say pass and we'll get to it. But how do the Jayhawks remedy those issues?
Well, I think they made a concerted effort in the offseason, looking more for fit than necessarily just getting the most talented guy, the highest ranked guy in the recruiting rankings, right? Finding somebody who is going to fit into a specific role. And I think more than just fit into a specific role, trying to find somebody that would be in the Bill Self circle of trust. Like that is a very real thing. If you're not in that circle of trust, you're going to have a quick hook in games. And so like we saw that, for instance, with Ryan Griffin and AJ Storr, where like if because they weren't in that circle of trust, and it's like, what else are you bringing to the table besides scoring? If they made a big mistake, like if you made a mental mistake, not being in the right spot or making a mistake on defense, or maybe, you should have boxed somebody out and got a rebound and you didn't, they were straight to the bench, right? Like it wasn't really a 3-strike approach. It was usually a 1 or a 2-strike approach to getting that quick hook. And then that just kind of felt like it led to a lack of those guys having, I don't know, like a positive mentality coming in. Like you just don't have the same confidence. You could understand that a little bit as a player. Looking at what they've done in the portal this year, it's almost been a little bit less focused on talent and less focused on just like, you could make the argument this team needs more shooting. In fact, I think they do need more shooting based on where the roster is right now. Yeah. But Bill Self is basically, it's almost like he's steering into what like Michigan State did last year, St. John's did last year, where it's just like, I don't think they're going to be that poor 3-point shooting, but they're just the things we do really well. And I think Bill Self is like, you know what, if we have a below average 3-point shooting team, but we have dogs, we have guys that I can trust that are going to defend, that are going to be 2-way players, that aren't just going to be one-dimensional players, he's going to have a much better time. He's going to have a much more fun time, and it's going to be more to his identity, which his identity has worked in a lot of previous seasons of college basketball.
I think so critical to what you said there is what we're seeing in this portal era. It's not about teams that have the best 5 individual players. It's about teams that can get the best 5. I've taken to saying it recently, just because they don't have a name doesn't mean they don't have game, right? Like just because it's not the sexiest guys in the portal doesn't mean you can't put a great talented group together that has all the right pieces and the right fit. So I love that from you. DJ, I want to ask you about the head of the snake here, or I guess the head of Rock Chalk, as it were, because in my opinion, Bill Self is one of the singularly best coaches, like X and O's, personalities, managing all of that in the nation. But we've seen these couple back-to-back years. You mentioned the health scare a couple years ago. I'm still, man, like that just still shakes me when I think about it. Do you think that Coach Bill Self can get this thing back on track, or is bringing in Jacque Vaughn kind of a signaling of what's to come in the next couple years?
Well, I think he can get it back on track. Like, I'm not going to count it against him. I'm not going to. It is funny. I know it's more of the trend based on what has happened. It's also funny because looking back to the season 2 years ago when they got blown out by Gonzaga in the second round, like Kevin McCullough was an All-American, and he was out for the last several weeks of that season. So I trust in Bill Self to get it figured out. Now, are they going to be back to being a 1 seed this year? That kind of remains to be seen. But I think he'll get it figured out to some extent. Now, does the way things are going in college basketball, does maybe that wear thin on you if you already are having some health stuff and you are a little bit older? It might. And maybe, we are on the shorter timeline of how long Bill Self coaches this team. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7. I don't know. Maybe he has so much fun this year coaching Darryn Peterson. He's just like, I want to do this forever. Right. Anything is kind of possible there. As far as the Jacque Vaughn pickup, I think it's great. I mean, I know he wasn't the most successful NBA head coach, but just to be an NBA head coach, there aren't a lot of those jobs. Like, you have to do something right to get one of those jobs. And we've seen plenty of college basketball coaches struggle at the NBA level and come back and, have all sorts of success at the college level. To get a former NBA head coach as an assistant coach in college basketball, that's a home run for Bill Self. Is it going to be the coach in waiting, coach of the future? I've always heard that the athletic department at KU adores Jacque Vaughn, and that even before this move that he would be considered for that future replacement. So I definitely think it's a possibility. I don't know that it would be the lead candidate, but I certainly think now that he's an assistant, it certainly ramps up the opportunity that it could happen. And certainly, you're a North Carolina guy, like getting to see what it's done with Hubert Davis. I'm sure there's been a little bit of mixed results, right? You go to a title game, you have a 1 seed another year, but you've also had some lows with that. And obviously every situation is different, but I think it's a possibility. I don't know that I would make it the favorite to happen either.
Yeah, that's really well said. And it's an interesting, like, this is, in my mind, the fourth notable time an NBA assistant, or, in Coach Vaughn's case, Coach Vaughn, that's weird to say still, a head coach has now come to the college ranks. We saw it with Kevin Young last year coming to BYU from being an NBA assistant. We've seen it now at Utah with Alex Jensen, a former Utah player, coming back to be their head coach. At Florida State with Luke Laux coming from being an NBA assistant to the head guy. And we see it here with Jacque Vaughn, obviously coming to be an assistant, not the head man. But I think it definitely has to track as a strong possibility, at very least, even if he stays on as an assistant, to just help Kansas culture be a thing going forward. All right, great stuff there from DJ. Love that. Now, part of getting Kansas basketball back on track, as we've already talked about, is having the right personnel in place. Have Coach Self and the staff been able to do that? And I think there's a couple slots left we still got to figure out, DJ. We'll look at all of that mix coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, trying to get tickets to be in Allen Fieldhouse for a big game? It's easy to lose track of it all, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you visibility of and control over all of your finances. What I love is that Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place. So you stop just like managing your money and you actually start building wealth. So maybe one day you can contribute to the like Jayhawk NIL fund or something like that. Instead of having to juggle multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan out long-term goals. Not like a folder on your phone with a whole bunch of different apps, just one app. I love it, man. My wife and I were always trying to be on the same page with finances, and Monarch Money helps make that more simple and easy. So join us. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. DJ, I want to talk now about Kansas personnel, because as you said, there have been some misses in the transfer portal. Guys that maybe we thought would be able to just burn it up from outside haven't been able to, other various things as well. So, now we got to start thinking about, does this version of the Jayhawks have that right personnel in place? Several things to talk about. El Marco Jackson hopefully coming back from injury well. Flory Bidunga deciding to come back out of the portal. But I think where everyone wants to start is hearing about Darryn Peterson, who for some people and some recruiting services has jumped over AJ DeBanza to be the number one player in this class. And so that's my question to you, Derek Johnson. Can Darryn Peterson be the best freshman, in America?
I think absolutely. And honestly, the expectations are scaring me because they're so high, but I'm buying into them too. That game where Darryn Peterson played DeBanza, and they played each other a couple times last year. But the one that everybody remembers is the one where DeBanza had like 50 points. I think it was like 48, 50, somewhere in that range. And Peterson had 61. And that was just an unbelievable. And Peterson hit the game-winning shot to move him past. I'm so excited for KU BYU. I don't know why they didn't schedule it twice. That's neither here nor there. But I think Peterson has that opportunity. He is just such a good competitor. He's such a complete player in everything he does. And sometimes you have to be a little trepidatious with things, because sometimes Bill Self gets a little excited with some of his offseason speech on players, and whether it's saying something to, I don't know, ramp them up, or if he actually believes, I don't know. But like, he has continuously, and this is something he's said multiple times now, whether it was when he signed or kind of recently, that he is the best incoming freshman that he's ever recruited to Kansas. And I mean, he's had Joel Embiid, he's had Andrew Wiggins, he's had, Josh Jackson was great as a freshman at Kansas. They've had other players who, were McDonald's All-Americans, top 10, top 15, top 20 recruits who ended up being NBA players, right? That is very high praise. So yes, the hype meter is off the charts for Darryn Peterson.
I love that. And like, I know he gets all of that attention, but for a while I've kind of liked Bryson Tiller. I know he fell off a little bit, but is he maybe being slept on a little bit because DP is so high in the rankings?
So the short answer to that is it depends. And the reason why is I think the player itself, I like Bryson Tiller a lot. Very skilled big man. I know a lot of people have mentioned like the ideal setup is he kind of is like one of the Morris twins that the Bill Self had, where this flexible, kind of like forward center type that you can play. The big thing for Tiller is going to be about kind of basketball experience and injury. So Tiller is coming off a ankle injury. He actually joined KU mid-semester from OTE and took like a red shirt, but he hasn't played organized team basketball. He's not going to be cleared till the start of July. And it's been like over a year since he's been like on the court with like a real setting of basketball, not just like individual drills or workouts or something like that. So the big question is, obviously you're a freshman, so there's that hump that you have to get over, and then you just haven't played basketball in a little bit of time. But I do think from a skill standpoint, like whether it's this year, whether it's in the future, I do think Kansas has something there with Tiller. But yeah, it seems like some people are kind of pumping the brakes on it a little bit this year, just because there is a lot to kind of overcome coming into this season.
Interesting. Well, another guy who has had maybe a post-hype sleeper is Elmarko Jackson, a name that a couple of years ago, everyone was high on coming into the year. Wasn't able to really, another one of those guys with Timberlake in that season that wasn't able to really fill it up like maybe we thought. Had that unfortunate injury ahead of last year, speaking of Tiller and injuries. What is kind of your hope and prognosis for Elmarko to step back in and hopefully really help this team?
So Marco was a really good defender as a freshman, but yeah, the other stuff, the game was way too fast for him. He struggled shooting the basketball and everything. I always thought Elmarko would be a really good player by year 3, but now we have that big injury in between where it's like, well, do we have to delay it another year there? But I think he'll have a big impact on the rotation. There was a recent article with CJ Moore in The Athletic where he talked to Bill Self, and Elmarko was killing it in the summer workouts last year, in the summer practices, enough so that Bill Self said that he was in line to start on last year's team. So I guess he would have started over Rylan Griffin is maybe the estimation of how we take that. But that means that maybe he was making that jump last year. Now, the big question is, coming off a season-ending injury, does that offset the improvements that he's made, where it's like he has to shake off the rest of the injury, even though he's a better player? So that'll be kind of interesting where that comes in. But I do think there's a big role for him on the team. I would expect him to play more than 20 minutes per game. I think he'll be a good defender. He's an athletic guard. The swing skill is going to be, one, does the game slow down now? But where's the shooting at? If he can shoot even 34%, he's such a good athlete that I think that kind of opens up the rest of the game for him.
Yeah. And look, for me, perhaps one of the biggest gets is like keeping guys you've already got. And you mentioned the North Carolina. For me, last year for Carolina, Seth Trimble went into the portal, ended up coming back. And I've like, what a get that was for Carolina. And so in that same vein, I've been so excited that ultimately Flory Bidunga decided to come back to Lawrence, man. I think that is massive. And that's almost like getting a portal guy, because you thought for a minute that maybe he wasn't going to come back. First off, can commentators please finally get his name right this year? I don't know how many variations of Bidunga, I'm like, come on, man, Bidunga, let's go. But like, we've had this long lineage of phenomenal Kansas bigs, whether it's just like Doak getting like 70% from the field or whatever it is. Can Flory step up in that sort of a massive way to really anchor this team inside?
I think he can. It's going to be a little different because like the Doak comparison, people love that one because it's a big man who blocks shots, rebounds, and just dunks
everything inside. Yes.
Right? But they're different players in a lot of ways. Doak was so strong. He was such a big dude. With Flory, he's this freak athlete, like physically, speed wise for the center position, agility wise, jumping, stuff like that. It'll be very interesting how it works, and like, can he avoid the foul trouble? Right now, KU only has 2 big men on their roster. It's Bryson Tiller and Flory Bidunga. Now they have 3 scholarships open, so they're going to add 1, maybe 2 big men still at this point in time. But I think he's going to make a big leap. I think when you saw last year when he was in the starting lineup, when he got more opportunity, when KJ Adams was hurt, there were some moments where you watched him, and even before KJ was hurt, there were some moments where he would have where it's like, oh, this dude is different. And it wasn't always consistent, but sometimes that's it for freshmen. Sometimes freshmen show flashes. They're just not consistent. So I think Flory is going to be a stud. And like the guy that I've been kind of copying it to is you go back to the 09 Kansas team, which it was after they won the title. They had Sharon Collins step into a bigger role. He becomes an All-American. That would be kind of your Darryn Peterson as a guard. Right. And Cole Aldridge went from McDonald's All-American, who barely played on a loaded title team, to all of a sudden being the starter, being a all-conference player, an all-defensive player in the country. And that's kind of the duo that I could see that twosome becoming for KU.
Man, that would be good. Well, and like one of the biggest issues is like you talked about Wani earlier and his lack of shooting, but man, what a mainstay he was of just being the engine that made this team go, and just his ability to share the ball. That in some ways for me is like, who steps in and does that? Is that El Marco? Is that Darryn? Is there somebody else on the roster that can step in and just be the glue that holds it all together? Who is that, DJ?
Well, so from like the assist leader, they've made it clear Darryn Peterson's going to be handling the ball. He's going to be the point guard. They say really your position is who you guard. So I think defensively, Peterson, he's 6'5" with a 6'10" wingspan. He'll probably be guarding threes, but offensively, he's going to be the point guard. Now you have multiple other point guards. Marco Jackson, Melvin Council are on the rosters. So they have other ball handlers, but that's been the best Bill Self teams. They have 2 or 3 ball handlers that they can play at one given time. As far as being like the glue guy specifically, I think Jaden Dawson is somebody I look to who was good 3-point shooter, good defender at Loyola Chicago. I think he'll kind of fill in a lot of different ways for you. I think Trey White will be a little bit of a glue guy in terms of like, he's not your traditional glue guy, but like he's a really good rebounder. He can defend a little bit. Like he just does a little bit of everything, kind of a Swiss Army knife. I think those are the 2 guys that I look at. And then Melvin Council as well, who is somebody that, I don't know how efficient of a scorer or a shooter he's going to be, but I think Bill Self's going to love him because that dude loves to compete and he defends his butt off, and he's an athletic point guard that Bill Self is kind of comped to Tyshawn Taylor.
Oh man, that's a good throw, man. Tyshawn, just all those names. I love it. That's great stuff. So we're going to keep our eyes on how does Kansas continue to fill out this roster. Will it be domestic guys? Will it be some more international? We'll have to watch and see what's going to happen there. But as Derek said, there are scholarships available. And so we will watch and wait and see how the Jayhawks round it all out. All right, here's where we got to get to round off the show. We recently got the non-conference schedule announced by the Jayhawks. The Big 12 recently put out the conference pairings. And so we know who Kansas is playing this year. Maybe not necessarily when and who and how, but man, it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll make some predictions and look at the schedule coming up in just a second. Isaac Schade, Derek Johnson, the host of Locked On Jayhawks. We're talking Jayhawks today. We've talked some personnel. We've talked about getting the Jayhawks back to being Jayhawks and just making everybody think about playing for second in the Big 12. Where I want to flip to now, Derek, is looking at the non-conference schedule. I love this exhibition game at Louisville in the Yum Center on October 24th. That's going to be great. The actual non-con schedule, remember, the Big 12, after 1 year at 20 games, is coming back to 18, everybody, so we'll keep our eyes on that. There's Green Bay in Allen Fieldhouse, so we'll see a little Doug Gottlieb coming in. That'll be fun. The return game at North Carolina, the first Friday of the season, just like last year in Allen Fieldhouse. A&M Corpus, Princeton, who will be, thankfully, for the Jayhawks without Xavion Lee, who's now at Florida. Versus Duke in the Champions Classic. We'll love that matchup. Players era TBD on that, but that'll be 3 games in Vegas. UConn coming to Lawrence, Kansas. I'm excited for that one on December 2nd. Mizzou, obviously at T-Mobile in Kansas City, as we always get. A game at NC State. Towson coming to Allen Fieldhouse, and then wrapping it up with Davidson. So, Derek, I just want to ask you first about those. Obviously, we don't know the opponents yet. For players era, but of the 13 games, how do you like the mix of bye games and high major teams and, the strength and difficulty of this non-conference schedule?
Oh, I mean, I love it from a perspective of just getting to watch the games. Like, how could you not love playing these more difficult schedules? I know you want your team's record to be good and everything, but like, it is an entertainment product. And don't you want to see your team? I mean, I just think back to that North Carolina game from last year too. How great of a game was that? I mean, it was high scoring. It was back and forth. It went down to the final possession. You have 2 blue bloods in college basketball. That was awesome. We need more of that. And so it's awesome.
On campus, like they're playing. Yes. True campus games.
Yes. That's the thing. I wish the Duke game was not just.
At
I know it's
MSG.
the Champions Classic this year, but I think back to last year when they decided to play in Vegas. Like, I want them to do a home and home, and maybe that'll be coming at some point too. But yeah, absolutely great when it's campus.
Man, good stuff there. Yeah. And all these kind of blue bloods, UConn, in my opinion, is in that blue blood conversation now. And so, like, at least 3 of those historic blue blood teams that Kansas is playing each and every one of them now, going to NC State in the first year of the Will Wade era. That's another true road game there. That'll be a lot of fun. And so looking forward to that. What do you think about UConn coming into Allen Fieldhouse? I think the Huskies should be back a little bit from where they were last year. And so that should be a great game.
Oh, yeah. I think that'll be a good one. I mean, they played 2 years ago, and Kansas actually beat UConn. And again, just one of those things where it's like Kansas last year, even though they had a down year with Bill Self, got the worst seed they've ever gotten in the NCAA tournament under Self, they beat Duke, who, for some you could argue was the best team in the country last year.
Yeah.
And then the year before that, they beat UConn, who ends up winning the title. That was the game. Donovan Klingen's dad was mad because he got sat up there pretty high in Allen Fieldhouse. But yeah, it was a great game when they first met. And this is part of a home and home now. They'll be going to stores coming up after this season as well. But yeah, that'll be a really fun one. That NC State one too adds a little bit of extra intrigue now because it seemed like Darian Williams was like, it was like, oh, he might be going to Kansas.
I thought so. Yeah.
And then NC State ends up, winning him out in the end. So now that one, I think, becomes a little bit more interesting too. Plus, it's always difficult to play on the road.
Ooh, yes. Speaking of which, I love that the NCAA is allowing these great high-level exhibition games, that they don't have to be secret scrimmages anymore. And it's a great way to test yourself against other high-level opponents, which is another true road opportunity going to the Yum Center against what I think is going to be another strong Louisville squad. Pat Kelsey did a great job there in year one. What do you Derek, at the like big picture level about these types of exhibition games going to test yourself on the road?
Yeah, it hasn't worked out for KU the last 2 years in terms of like they lost both games. They got crushed at Arkansas last year, a little beat up coming into the game. And then they lost a closer one at Illinois. But honestly, it kind of like looking back on it kind of showed that, yeah, maybe this team's not as good as because they were preseason number 1. Yeah. But I like the opportunity. I think it tests you early in the season. And I think that'll be an awesome test specifically because with Louisville, I do think they're going to have one of the best backcourts in the country this year. And the 5-star freshman, is Michael Brown?
Brown.
Yep. Last name. Yeah, Michael Brown. That dude's a stud. And that's going to be a really fun matchup with, I don't know how much they'll be guarding each other specifically, but, certainly with teams who switch, which like everybody does now, you'll see some matchups with Peterson and him. So I'm really excited for that one for sure. And that place is going to be popping. So that's going to be a really good one.
Yes. Oh, my word. That'll be great. Okay. So I know we don't know the 3 games of the Players Era Festival, but assuming, winning the bye games, Green Bay, A&M Corpus, let's call Princeton a bye game, Towson and Davidson, let's call that 5-0. How do you predict right now, as we look at it, Kansas will fare in the other games? So true road game at North Carolina, Duke in the Champions Classic, UConn, the border battle with Mizzou, and at NC State. What do you predict for those 5 games?
I think if you look at the at North Carolina and at NC State game, if you were to say they split between the two, I think you'd be okay with that. So that would put you at 1-1 there. With the UConn game at home, the Duke game on neutral, Missouri game on neutral, I think 2-1 would be reasonable there. Or 1-2 wouldn't be shocking. Again, it kind of depends. Like, is Kansas going to end up being a top 10, 15 team, or are they going to be closer to like 20 to 25? Because then you're probably going 1-2 in that situation. But I think realistically 3-2, 2-3 in that 5-game stretch is not crazy. The Players Era, again, we have no idea because I don't know who they're going to be playing. It's also weird because there's other Big 12s. Like, what if Kansas plays Houston in the Players Era? Like, I don't know. That's going to be really weird with all that stuff happening. So I think if you can get out of the non-con with 3 losses, I think you'd feel really good if you're Kansas. The tough thing to think here is like, there's a very real chance it's less than that because what if they do go only 1 or 2 losses? Because as much as these last 2 teams that they've had haven't been up to that kind of Kansas standard that we're used to, they still were really good through the non-con. It was more in conference play when they fell off. Like, again, they beat UConn, they beat Duke, they beat Michigan State last year in the Champions Classic. They beat a lot of these really good teams in the non-con. It was more after non-conference play when they kind of fell off a little bit there. So it would not shock me if they only lost 1 or 2 games there. But yeah, I guess my official prediction would be 3.
Okay. I like that. So a potentially 10-3 record coming out of non-con play. I agree that I would feel great about that if I was Kansas. Just a quick look at the Big 12 schedule. Again, we have the matchups, the matrix, but we don't know when and what order and all of that. So home only games for the Jayhawks, BYU, that's good news. Utah, TCU, Baylor, Cincy, and Houston, also very good news for the Jayhawks. Away only, UCF, tough to go down to Orlando. Arizona State, the Pokes, Texas Tech, that's going to be tough. West Virginia and Colorado. The home and away games are Arizona, Iowa State, and then, of course, K-State as well, who landed Mr. P.J. Haggerty out of Memphis. Derek, as you saw this matrix come out, I think this was the end of last week when it came out. What were kind of your initial thoughts about the Kansas schedule?
Yeah, the first one was, again, like a blown mistake not to have the BYU game be the one you do twice instead of the Arizona one, for instance. They should have done the Arizona home and home last year, but that's, again, just kind of weird. I do think Kansas got a little bit fortunate with who they played home versus who they have on the road. Now, notwithstanding the teams they play home and away, because, again,
sure.
Iowa State's probably going to be pretty good. And, Arizona's probably going to be pretty good, right? I mean, K-State at least has some talent that'll make them interesting. But you look at the teams they're playing on the road, Texas Tech is really the only road team they play in Big 12 play of the teams they only play once, right, that you look at and say definitively they're probably going to be a top 10, 15, even 25 team in the country. Like, I think West Virginia will probably be solid, but like, I don't know that anybody's going out on a limb to be like, yes, they are for sure a top 25 team. And most of those other teams were bottom half of the Big 12 teams versus you look at the teams you're getting at home. It's like, yeah, you'd rather have to play Houston at home. You'd rather have to play some of these teams at home. So I do think that was a little bit fortunate for KU. And I think it comes out in a positive way, but yeah, that KU BYU ticket, I am already circling that one. I mean, as loaded as we talked about the non-con is, I think that's the game I'm most excited for this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I said the same thing when Andy and I talked about this last week. Like BYU and Houston, 2 probable top 5 teams, and you only got to play them at home. I know that doesn't help like with net stuff, but you don't need a ton of net stuff because it's the Big 12 and a loaded non-con. And so that's ultimately a really helpful deal. All right, DJ, anything else you want to say about these Jayhawks as we get ready to get out of here?
I do think they're being slept on a little bit. The roster's not complete. They're looking internationally. They're scouring the transfer portal again. I don't know that they're going to get a game changer at this point, but I think Peterson's going to be that good. I think Flory's going to take a jump. I think Bill Self's going to be good. I don't know that I'm expecting 1 or 2 seed. I made that 09 comparison with Flory to Sharon and Cole to Flory and stuff. Or Darryn Peterson to Sharon. And, that team got a 3 seed. That team won the Big 12 over Blake Griffin in Oklahoma. So to me, right now, I'm looking at this team somewhere in that like 3 to 5 seed range, depending on certain outcomes, but we'll see what the rest of the portal has to offer.
That's a good word. All right, gang. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Please make sure you go check out Derek's great work on Locked On Jayhawks every day. Follow him on social media at D Johnson Radio. Why? Because this dude, you've heard his voice. It's like butter. And so Derek's covering lots of great stuff. Man, like what? You cover so much stuff, Derek. Where all can people find that?
Yeah, just at D Johnson Radio. That's probably the easiest way on Twitter. But yeah, Locked On Jayhawks, same way you get this stuff. Anywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube.
Man, so good. Gang, just like we were saying about Locked On Jayhawks, if you haven't subscribed to Locked On College Basketball, both on video and audio, make sure you do that right now so you don't miss any of the great content all summer long. Yes, we are here with you. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to have you there as well. It's free to join, and that link is in the show notes. As always, I want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Shouts to Mick Bruins. And until tomorrow, peace.